You are scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., mind racing through tomorrow's meeting, next week's bills, and that text you sent 3 hours ago that still hasn't been answered. Your chest feels tight, you're breathing shallow, and you are mentally preparing for disasters that exist only in your imagination. But what if I told you that the mental habit you think is keeping you safe is actually the very thing destroying your peace, your relationships, and your success? Here's the devastating truth that will shatter everything you believe about preparation. The overthinking you call being responsible is actually the invisible force sabotaging every area of your life. You've been conditioned to believe that worry equals care, that anxiety equals preparation, that mental rehearsal equals readiness. But right now, millions of people are trapped in a cycle, so insidious they mistake their prison for protection. They wake up scanning for threats, calling it responsibility. They mentally rehearse conversations, calling it preparation. They imagine worst-case scenarios, calling it realism. What is really happening? You've trained your nervous system to treat normal life like a constant emergency. Here's something that might shock you. Worry is more addictive than any substance you can name. Not because it feels good, but because it gives you the most dangerous drug of all, the illusion of control. Every time you mentally rehearse that difficult conversation, your brain releases a small hit of satisfaction. I am preparing, it whispers. Every time you imagine worst-case scenarios, you feel productive. I am being responsible, you tell yourself. Every time you lie awake planning for disasters, you feel important. I am staying ahead of problems, you rationalize. But here is the brutal reality your mind doesn't want you to see. While you are busy solving problems that don't exist, real life is happening right in front of you. Your child is trying to show you their drawing, but you are mentally reviewing tomorrow's schedule. Your partner is speaking to you, but you are already 3 conversations ahead. The sunset is breathtaking, but you are calculating how much work you have left. You are physically present, but mentally absent, and it is costing you everything that actually matters. The most terrifying part, you've convinced yourself this mental torture is productive. Think about your last peaceful moment, not a moment when everything was perfect, but when your mind was quiet. When was that? Last week, last month? Can you even remember? Let me share something that will blow your mind. Research shows that 85% of what we worry about never actually happens. And here is the kicker of the 15% that does occur. 79% of people report handling it better than expected, often learning something valuable in the process. Read that again. You are spending your precious mental energy on things that statistically won't happen, and even when they do happen, you are more capable than you think. Your brain doesn't distinguish between real threats and imagined ones. When you worry about next week's presentation, your body responds as if a predator is stalking you right now. Heart rate spikes, breathing becomes shallow, muscles tense, stress hormones flood your system. You are essentially poisoning yourself with stories about things that haven't happened yet and probably never will. But here is where it gets really insidious. This chronic state of hypervigilance rewires your brain. You become addicted to the adrenaline rush of imagined crisis. Your nervous system gets so accustomed to emergency mode that peace feels dangerous, calm feels irresponsible. You've accidentally trained yourself to be afraid of your own peace. You know that person who stays calm during actual emergencies, the one who doesn't panic when plans change or unexpected challenges arise. You might think they're naturally more relaxed, but here is the truth. They've simply stopped creating internal chaos about external circumstances. Most people are exhausted not because their lives are particularly difficult, but because they're fighting battles that exist only in their minds. They're solving problems that haven't been presented. They're defending against attacks that aren't coming. They're preparing for wars that will never be declared. You are not tired because you are doing too much. You are tired because you are thinking too much. This hypervigilance comes with a price tag most people never calculate. It costs you creativity because your mind is too busy catastrophizing to innovate. It costs you connection because you are not fully present with people you love. It costs you opportunities because you are too mentally exhausted to recognize them. It costs you peace because you've trained your nervous system to treat ordinary life as a constant emergency. And the cruelest irony, the more you try to control through worry, the more out of control you feel. The more you prepare for problems, the less prepared you are for actual solutions. Imagine waking up tomorrow, and instead of your mind immediately jumping to problems, you simply notice you are awake. You feel your body in the bed. You hear sounds around you. You take a breath that isn't shallow or panicked. You start your day without your mind racing through 17 different scenarios. You make coffee and actually taste it. You shower and feel the water. You look in the mirror and see someone who isn't at war with themselves. This isn't fantasy. This is what happens when you stop feeding the worry monster. But here is what nobody tells you about this transformation. It doesn't happen because you solve all your problems first. It happens because you realize most of your problems aren't actually problems at all. They're stories, they're interpretations, They're fears dressed up as facts. The shift happens when you stop asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" and start asking, "What if I am strong enough to handle whatever comes?" Here is something that might terrify you. What if you didn't have to figure everything out right now? What if you didn't need a perfect plan for every possible scenario? What if you could move through life with curiosity instead of anxiety? The most successful people you know have one thing in common. They've learned to be comfortable with uncertainty. They make decisions without having all the information. They take action before they feel ready. They trust they'll figure things out as they go. This isn't recklessness. This is wisdom. When you stop trying to control every variable, you become more responsive to what is actually happening. When you stop preparing for every possible disaster, you have more energy to handle real challenges when they arise. When you stop living in your head, you start living in your life. The people who seem to have everything go well for them aren't lucky. They're not more talented. They're not more connected. They've simply stopped creating internal resistance to life's natural flow. They've learned the secret that changes everything. When you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. Right now, you are probably thinking, "But I can't just stop worrying. What if something terrible happens? What if I am not prepared? What if I let people down?" Your mind is doing exactly what it is trained to do, creating reasons why you need to stay imprisoned. But here's what I want you to understand. You've been worrying for years, and it hasn't made you safer. It has made you smaller. It hasn't made you stronger. It has made you more fragile. It hasn't given you more control. It has given you the exhausting illusion of control while stealing your peace. Think about the last time something genuinely challenging happened in your life. Did your prior worrying help you handle it? Or did you discover resources within yourself that you didn't know existed? Did you find that you were more resilient, more creative, more capable than your worried mind had convinced you? Most people discover that their actual problems are much more manageable than their imagined ones. Picture this version of yourself. You wake up without immediately scanning for threats. You make decisions without agonizing over every possible outcome. You have conversations without mentally scripting responses. You go to sleep without your brain serving you a buffet of worries. You are not careless. You are not irresponsible. You are not naive. You are free. Free from the exhausting job of trying to predict and prevent every possible problem. Free from the impossible task of controlling things outside your control. Free from the prison of your own overthinking. This version of you handles challenges better because your nervous system isn't already maxed out from fighting imaginary battles. This version makes better decisions because judgment isn't clouded by fear. This version has better relationships because you are actually present instead of mentally rehearsing your next interaction. And here is the most beautiful part. This version of you already exists. It is just buried under layers of worry. You've been carrying so long you forgot they weren't part of you. So how do you make this shift? How do you stop feeding the worry monster that has been consuming your peace for years? It starts with catching yourself in the act. Notice when your mind starts spinning stories about the future. Notice when you start mentally rehearsing conversations. Notice when you start building disaster scenarios in your head. And then, instead of feeding those thoughts with more analysis, more planning, more worry, you simply breathe. You return to your body. You return to this moment. You remind yourself, this is not happening now. This is a story my mind is writing. You don't fight the worry. You don't try to stop it by force. You simply stop feeding it with your attention. The goal isn't to never worry again. The goal is to stop letting worry run your life. Here is a simple practice that will change everything. For the next week, every time you catch your mind creating problems that don't exist, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Is this happening right now too? Is this something I can actually control? 3. What would I do if I knew I could handle whatever comes? Then take 1 breath and return to what is actually in front of you. When you stop worrying, you don't become careless. You become present. You don't become irresponsible. You become responsive. You don't become naive. You become grounded. You start showing up differently in relationships. People notice you are actually listening instead of waiting for your turn to speak. You start making decisions from clarity instead of fear. You start taking action from strength instead of anxiety. Your energy shifts. Your posture changes. Your voice becomes steadier. Your presence becomes more magnetic because you are not broadcasting anxiety in every interaction. And here is what is truly remarkable. When your energy changes, everything around you begins to shift too. Opportunities start appearing because you are present enough to notice them. Relationships improve because you are not bringing internal chaos into every interaction. Problems become smaller because you are not amplifying them with fear. The life you want isn't waiting for you to solve all your problems. It is waiting for you to stop creating problems that don't exist. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue carrying the weight of imaginary problems, or you can set it down. You can continue fighting battles that exist only in your mind, or you can declare peace. You can continue living in a future built on fear, or you can return to a present built on possibility. The peace you are seeking isn't something you'll find someday when everything is perfect. It is something you can choose right now, in this moment, exactly as things are. Your mind might protest. It might tell you that you can't afford to stop worrying, that something terrible will happen if you let your guard down, that you need to stay vigilant to stay safe. But here's what I want you to remember. You've been the security guard of your own prison for too long. You've been the warden of your own worry. You've been the architect of your own anxiety. It is time to walk out of the cell you've built and discover that the door was never locked. When you stop worrying, you discover something profound. Life becomes exponentially easier, not because your circumstances change, but because you stop making them harder than they need to be. You stop creating problems that don't exist. You stop solving puzzles that were never presented. You stop defending against attacks that aren't coming. You stop preparing for wars that will never be declared. Instead, you start responding to what is actually happening. You start making decisions based on reality rather than fear. You start taking action from a place of strength rather than anxiety. You start living from your center rather than your circumstances. The most successful people you know have learned this secret. When you stop creating internal resistance, external results improve dramatically. Here is my challenge to you. For the next 24 hours, every time you catch your mind spinning stories about the future, simply breathe and return to now. Don't try to stop the thoughts. Don't fight them. Simply notice them and choose not to feed them. Notice how much mental energy you reclaim. Notice how much lighter you feel. Notice how much more present you become. Notice how much more capable you feel when you are not fighting imaginary battles. And then, maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to understand what I mean when I say that. When you stop worrying, everything starts to go well. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop making it harder than it needs to be. Not because problems disappear, but because you stop creating problems that don't exist. Not because you gain control over everything, but because you stop trying to control things you never could. The life you want is waiting for you on the other side of your worry. All you have to do is stop feeding the monster and start feeding your peace. The choice is yours. The moment is now. The life you want is possible. Are you ready to stop worrying and start living?